It's been called the Super Bowl of consumer conferences. ICR kicked off in Orlando this week, and the NYSE is sitting down with industry leaders. And joining me now is Anton, the CEO of ICR. Anton, welcome.
Thanks so much. Thanks for having me on, and welcome to the conference. It's great to have you here.
So happy to be here. So first of all, what is ICR?
So ICR is an communications and advisory firm. So we're strategic communications, everything from public company, financial communications, to corporate public relations, crisis, transaction support, everything around communications, how companies package their stories, tell their stories, as well as we have an advisory business that works with companies if they're looking to go public, helping them manage that process. We have a converts practice that's doing convertible debt offerings and helping companies manage through that. The conference is a manifestation of almost 30 years of our business and working with clients in the consumer space. We bring together companies that are here to present their stories, whether they're public or private. We bring investors in the public markets, private equity firms. We are sponsored by 49 different professional services firms. And so they bring all of their teams and their clients, whether it be their banking teams, the sell side analysts, as well as a number of law firms and things like that. So it's an incredibly efficient format for companies to meet all of the important audiences, for investors to see all of the companies that they're monitoring and paying attention to. And of course, we have media here as well, which is really exciting.
So what do you think the benefit of having everybody in one space collaborating is, especially post-pandemic? I think people really have a need to be back in person. What do you think the benefit of everyone gathering together is?
Pre-pandemic, it was obviously a very successful conference in its own right, but we have seen the attendance jump dramatically post-pandemic. I think we get more than 3,000 people here in total over the 3-day event. The importance of being in person has come back. We've seen that across our business as well. Zoom is very efficient, and other resources like that is very efficient, obviously. But at the end of the day, relationships, looking someone in the whites of their eyes is super important. That's super important for the investment community. They ultimately believe in fundamentals and good stories, but they also bet on management. And I think that's really important for them to see management, to understand what they're doing, what they're saying. And storytelling has become more and more important in the marketplace, period. There's a lot of noise in the market. There's a lot of competition. And so how you define what you're doing, how you differentiate what you're doing, and telling that story is critical. And the reality is, in today's world, with social media through traditional media, if you're not telling your story, someone else is going to tell it for you, and it may not be what you want.
And we're seeing a trend toward companies moving more towards storytelling. What does that look like in practice?
Well, it's really important for us and obviously our advisory business, because how you shape that story, how you tell that story to your various audiences. I always tell people that I joined this business when we still used to use a fax to send out press releases. Most of the kids that work for me don't even know what a fax is, right? And today the integrated audience is such that when you get on an earnings call for a company, you could have competition on there, you could have your employees on there. It's not just the investment community anymore. And so the integrated storytelling is paramount. It's also about how you get above the noise and how you define your story and differentiate it. And I think that's, really critical in today's market.
And what is your outlook for investors in the public markets in 2026, especially in the consumer space?
Well, there's been what I would say a low level of activity, almost none, as you know, for the capital markets, in particular IPOs and things like that, over the last couple of years in the consumer space. So I think we're expecting that to turn this year and see more activity there. The importance of that is it's really sort of defines, I think, what investors in the consumer space are looking for, which is growth. Growth is paramount, and it's hard to find it right now. We have seen a number of companies, our clients, pre-announce really good numbers. So the consumer, and particularly on the high-end luxury side, is holding up, and obviously consumer businesses depend on the consumer. Is holding up. The numbers that we're seeing coming out of holiday seem quite strong. So I think you're going to see investors stay disciplined, but reward growth and long-term sustainable, predictable growth.
And how have you seen AI impact the consumer space over the past year or so?
So it's interesting because we're all thinking about it all the time as it relates to our own businesses. There is a bit of a disconnect from the investment community and consumer companies because if you tell the right story around AI, you're certainly being rewarded for that. But the reality is for most companies who are constantly thinking about it, they're using AI certainly in the first instance for operational efficiency, right? How do you get operational leverage? Workflow efficiency is critical for companies, especially in consumer world where your margins are pretty thin. Your ability to use AI to drive more profitable operations is essential. That said, I think there's a lot of noise around how AI can change perhaps the front end of businesses, and I think people are still trying to figure that out. We're definitely seeing it as it relates to targeting consumers and customers to make sure that you're delivering your message and your product to the right people. And I think AI is helping do that, but I think there's, early days of how people are applying AI, and we're still yet to see really come into action on the front end.
And how do you think these consumer companies can differentiate themselves in this market space?
Yeah, well, so this comes back to the storytelling. And again, it's critical in terms of how you position yourself. And that applies across your audiences. And what I mean by that is how a company in the consumer space defines its brand, defines what it means to the consumer, and how they create that covenant of trust with their consumer base is all about how they tell that story to them. Likewise, they have to do the same with the investment community. They have to make sure that investors understand their relationship with consumers, understand the longevity of their business, that it's not just one-hit product wonder, so to speak, which is great in the short term, but ultimately for the kinds of companies that are here, they're talking about long-term growth and how they can drive their awareness, their brand with their consumers relate to that growth.
All right, Anton Nicholas, CEO of ICR, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate it.